On Mysteries tonight, how does this surgeon operate without any anesthetic in sight? What stopped this man from falling to his death? And a plane crash in Scotland, why was no wreckage ever found? Welcome to a new series of mysteries. Our first story reconstructs the events which happened during what was meant to be a straightforward mountain rescue operation in America. The men involved in the rescue were highly experienced and thought they'd seen everything. But what happened to one of them that night still confounds them to this day. Fort Canby State Park, Washington stretches across almost 2,000 acres of beautiful beaches, cliffs and forests. It's kept safe for the 300,000 visitors each year by park rangers like Carol Vorderman. For the last 15 years, Gary has led the park rangers' mountain rescue team.
Our typical cliff rescue generally involves people like rockhounds, young males who like to show off that they're very good at climbing, and they get on the basalt cliffs and they actually go beyond their capabilities and get stuck, and that's where we come in. The call for the rescue came in on August 30th, 1994 at about 7:40 in the evening. I was at home enjoying my last night off before going back to work. Hello? Okay, I'm on my way. Call 911 and get the team dispatched. All right, bye-bye.
Who was that?
That's the park office. We got a rescue. We got a 15-year-old boy up on the cliff, so I got to get going.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, don't forget your boots.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a safe one.
It's out the door and away he goes. And then for me, it's time to wait and sit and look at the clock and wonder how long it's going to take.
With this rescue, I think the first thought that went through my mind was the fact that it's getting dark. And anytime you have a night rescue, it just magnifies the possibilities of problems. I was also concerned that he'd been on the cliff for over an hour, which means the individual's getting really fatigued. And if you get fatigued, you can't hang on. So I knew there was an urgency to get there as quick as we could. Central 7 Cliff Rescue is on scene with one aboard.
At the bottom of the cliff, Gary met the rest of the team for a briefing before they started the climb.
Hi guys, we got a 15-year-old lad that's on the backside of this hill. Okay guys, just make sure we all have headlamps. Let's get 4 ropes. The parents are at the base of the cliff right now. As we were climbing up the cliff to get on top over the boy, we were deep in mental thoughts about what we're going to do.
Gary had decided that the team would lower themselves down to the buoy from the top of the cliff. The first job was to find something strong enough to attach their ropes to.
We were a little concerned about having a big enough anchor. We had a number of trees, but all the trees were fairly small. We didn't trust them to carry the full weight of the rescuer and possibly a victim.
I was wearing a standard rescue harness. I was, at that time, not attached to any ropes. And I was standing on the edge of the trail using my headlamp, checking out this spruce tree. And I found myself bouncing along down this cliff on my back. And my headlamps lit up the brush. And they were just like telephone poles at night when you're driving the car. They just flashed by. And I was into the darkness of the night. As I was falling, I knew that the chances of me surviving were pretty small. And at that moment, I had this thought. In 16 years that this team has been doing rescues, no one has ever been hurt, no one has ever died, and I definitely didn't want to be the first one. All of a sudden there was this pressure on my sternum, and it like pinned me against the rocks. I actually stopped falling. I knew that logically there was no reason for me to stop. There was a spreading of warmth that actually went all the way through my body. And at the same time, with that warmth came this great feeling of love. I wasn't scared. I was very calm. It was like I had taken a pill before surgery to relax me. It's an incredible feeling.
But back at the top of the cliff, the others hadn't realized what had happened.
We had been talking back and forth as we always do, and I asked the question,
Gary, where are you, bud?
no answer. So I'm saying,
Gary?
no answer.
I didn't know what had happened. I mean, all of a sudden he was there and then he wasn't, and then there's this light shining back up at me.
And I rolled my head to the right, and all I could see was the sheer cliffs. I mean, they were nearly vertical. And this caused me to take a deep breath, put my head back against the rocks and try to figure out, more what was going on. And I looked to my left, and within arm length was this small little sapling. So I reached over with my left hand, and I grabbed onto the sapling. It held my weight, and I was amazed at that, because when trees grow in rocks, a lot of times their roots aren't very big, and the size of this sapling should not have held me. I basically stood up on this sapling, and when I stood up, I was able to find some handholds, and I just slowly climbed up.
Worried about how long the boy had been stuck on the cliff face, Gary decided not to tell anyone about his own fall until after they were all back on the ground.
Well, after the incident, when we were back down on the ground, Gary related to the whole group what had happened to him. And there was a significant amount of disbelief among some of the crew members.
We thought you were just trying to get out of work.
Well, that's what you probably always think.
I was skeptical about it. I don't know what stopped him. Did he reach out and grab a root? Did he grab a tree? There's not a lot there.
But the next day, when Roger and Greg went back to the cliff top, they changed their minds.
And I looked at the area where he'd fallen and where he'd slept, and I'm going, I don't believe this. I mean, I just don't believe that he's still among us.
Nothing there to hold him. No place to grab a hold of, nothing to grab onto.
I have no doubt in my mind that what happened to Gary, and that there was a helping hand there.
Gary himself is very clear about what he thinks happened that night.
I've always believed there are guardian angels, something looking over us. So I believe it was the hand of God or an angel that just pinned me against the rocks.
But some experts have a far more down-to-earth explanation for what happened.
What really stopped Gary wasn't a mystery to me. It was that there was a piece of equipment, clipped to his climbing harness. It was a piece of loose clothing or something snagged on a rock spike or a bush, a branch of a tree, and in the dusk and dark, maybe he wasn't aware of what it was. But for sure, there was something scientific that stopped him from falling.
I quickly ruled out it wasn't my rescue harness, because when your rescue harness is snagged on something, it kind of has a tendency to cinch up in certain areas, and the harness wasn't cinching.
Weatherman Andy Yateman believes he can explain why Gary felt as though something was pushing him against the cliff.
Now, as the wind hit the bottom of the cliff and gave that rapid upward motion, the gusty winds accentuated by the shape of the cliff, it would have probably have given Gary quite a buffeting. Then those winds could be reaching 80, 90, perhaps even more than that miles per hour. And I wonder whether that was the trigger that made him reach out and actually grab something on the side of the cliff.
But what this doesn't explain are the feelings of warmth and love Gary claims to have had.
When Gary fell, all his senses would be telling his body that there was imminent danger, perhaps of death. So that he felt warmth in the body because of the effects of adrenaline and other hormones in the body. He felt love because of the effects of the hormones in the brain. And the effects of these hormones are very extensive. They'll change all his perceptions and all his feelings and all his thoughts.
Gary's wife Barb says she knew he was never in any real danger.
I had the oddest feeling while I was sitting at the computer. I had the sensation of falling, like when you're on a roller coaster and you bottom out. There's that kind of hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach. Simultaneously, my peripheral vision went to warp drive. Everything just kind of zoomed out of range, and a little voice in my head said, "Gary fell, but everything's going to be all right."
I believe there's a purpose for it. It's either to get my story out, or I'm going to be saving more people's lives. I don't know which. Maybe it's a combination of both.
This is the home of Dr. Angel Escudero, a renowned surgeon in southern Spain. Patients have been referred to his operating theatre for the past 25 years. Nothing mysterious about that. But what is mysterious is that in more than 1,000 operations, not a single patient has been given any anesthetic. Dr. Escudero says that his patients can block the pain of surgery by using the power of their minds alone. He uses a technique which he invented called noisy therapy. It means healing by thinking. And for it to work, the doctor has to meet his patients the day before their operation. Maribel Martinez is going to have an operation to remove varicose veins from her legs.
Basta con cerrar los puntos de... My patient currently suffers from cramps, tiredness and heavy legs. Her operation will require 4 deep incisions in order to correct the blood flow in her veins.
Dr. Escudero prepares Maribel for her operation by explaining how noisy therapy works. He says that when a patient is frightened, their mouth becomes dry. So, if Maribel can force herself to produce saliva throughout the entire operation, her brain will feel no pain, and she will become psychologically anesthetized.
Just repeat after me. My whole body, from my head to my toes, is anesthetized.
My whole body, from my head to my toes, is anesthetized.
The doctor then suggests a test run and offers Maribel a needle to stick into her leg.
Así la pones ahí mismo. Muy bien. Ahora muévela.
He says that this proves she can make her body feel no pain.
During the preparation, I felt good, very comfortable and calm. I sent to my brain the command that my body was anesthetized, and that's what happened. I stuck the needle in my leg, as you saw. I can do it, and so could you.
Yo lo puedo hacer y vosotros también.
The experience and knowledge Maribel gained about how her brain works will mean she can have the operation with no chemical anesthetic and while fully conscious.
Completamente consciente.
Before Dr. Escudero makes the first incision into Maribel's leg, he asks her to produce saliva in her mouth, and then to say out loud that her body is anesthetized. But although Maribel looks relaxed, can the noisy therapy really work? Or will she feel the scalpel cut into her? Normally, for an operation like this, a patient would be under general anesthetic. In order to isolate where the problem is, Dr. Escudero plans to make 2 incisions on the backs of her knees and 2 on her upper thighs. Part of the way through the operation, Maribel is given a mirror because Dr. Escudero believes that if a patient can actually see themselves in a calm and relaxed state, it helps to strengthen the psychological anesthesia. In an operation like this, Dr. Escudero doesn't use any traditional patient monitoring, such as taking the pulse. He says he can judge the strength of the patient's psychological anesthesia by looking at the pupils, which should be contracted, by looking at the colour of the skin, which should remain the same, and the constant presence of saliva in the mouth. As the operation nears completion, Maribel is still so relaxed that she's able to telephone her husband to tell him she's okay. As soon as the operation is finished, Maribel is on her feet. Later on that day, she went back to work. So it would appear that without any chemical anaesthetic, Maribel felt no pain as the scalpel cut into her leg. In fact, as I witnessed, she felt no pain throughout the entire operation. Dr. Escudero says that this technique has been used in many other ways, including childbirth, where hundreds of deliveries of babies have been made, apparently without an epidural in sight. So, how does noesi therapy work? Can it be explained?
The sort of surgery that Dr. Escudero is performing is painful surgery. And no matter how calm or collected a patient would be, when the knife cut into the skin, the patient would move, unless they were fully anesthetized in some way. I've been giving anesthetics now for about 25 years, and throughout the whole of that time, I haven't seen anything that's like noesi therapy, and it seems completely inexplicable as to how it's exactly working.
Having taught hundreds of people to walk over hot coals, Steve Critchley believes he may have the answer.
It's the beliefs they hold in front of that fire which will affect their physiology, and that will affect the state and how they feel. If they're standing in front of that fire thinking, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm going to burn, absolutely they will. When somebody's actually been given the opportunity to actually put a needle into their body without anaesthetic, that is proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's possible. And they go into the operation with that belief and with that trust. They've already had the experience.
It would be quite astonishing to me as an anaesthetist that you could focus your mind to that extent that you could just blot out the pain. That really is astonishing. And they talked about the miracle of modern anesthesia in 1846. Well, this would be the new modern miracle.
But some people say that Dr. Escudero is simply using a variety of techniques which already exist.
As a hypnotherapist, I would use skills designed to do the same thing, which is to relax people to a state when you can appeal to that part of the mind responsible for having effects or physiological changes in the body. He is focusing their attention, their whole attention, on an activity, to have a wet mouth or to bring saliva to the mouth. And that is a principle, a main principle of hypnosis.
But Dr. Escudero insists his methods are unique.
Noesi therapy is absolutely not hypnosis, because I don't control the patient's cerebral functions like the hypnotists. I teach the patient to consciously use all that's best in the brain without the need for me to control it.
There's no doubt that if it were a proven and reliable technique, noesi therapy or psychological anesthesia could revolutionize certain aspects of pain control, not just in Western medicine, but also in third world countries where chemical anesthetics are simply not available. However, all of this must be mere speculation at present, because noesi therapy has not been formally researched or recognized by the medical authorities in Britain, who would be well placed to solve this particular mystery. 2 years ago, there was a huge explosion in the sky over the Isle of Lewis, just off the coast of Scotland. As you're about to see, several explanations as to what people saw have been put forward. But as far as the islanders themselves are concerned, they're convinced there's been some kind of cover-up.
Lewis is one of the remoter islands off of Scotland. We are really right butt up against the Atlantic, and the weather conditions and that here can be very severe at times, and they change very, very rapidly. One minute you can be in brilliant sunshine, and the next you'll be in a hurricane force wind. The people of Lewis, and they're very quiet, reserved, and they don't normally get too excited about things. When they do tell you of an incident, they're obviously quite concerned that something has gone on.
For the Coast Guards, October the 26th, 1996 started as a quiet day. With clear visibility, there'd been no emergencies. At 5 o'clock, that was to change.
I noticed this flash out of the corner of my eye, and I stopped and had a looked up, and there was this streak of black smoke, and I was really surprised to see such a thing. It looked like a small plane with a damaged wing. I just stood there watching it in complete surprise.
22 West.
The Coast Guard Centre started getting calls reporting a plane in trouble.
Once you're airborne, over.
So we immediately rang the Air Rescue Centre in Kinloss and asked them for any aircraft activity and any military activity within our area. But they said there was nothing that they knew of that was going on at the time. But they were concerned because this incident happened on the main transatlantic flight line out to the States and beyond. So there was large concern that possibly an aircraft had ditched into the water with the possibility of hundreds of casualties.
Although the Coast Guard couldn't get confirmation of an air crash from other authorities, on Lewis they continued getting calls.
I was out with my dog exercising and I saw the plane visible. It was a plane coming over. There was a lot of smoke coming from the rear end as it headed towards the sea, and it was declining rapidly. I knew there was something wrong. It really did. There was something something was wrong. I did hear a noise in the distance, like a thunder. I was concerned. I wasn't frightened. I was concerned. I'd never seen anything like that before.
It became apparent that a lot of other people had seen this incident and this large bang and a flash in the sky. And we then began to get numerous telephone calls reporting the same thing.
Coast Guard Rescue.
Hello, Coast Guard. I'm calling from Ness in
Your immediate thoughts rush through your minds that this is, a major disaster. Your adrenaline starts to run.
Stornoway lifeboat, Stornoway Coast Guard, go ahead.
Things become very frantic in the ops room because you've got so much work to do.
All stations, all stations.
You've got to work out search areas for the search units going out. You've got to call these units out, trying to get people to the scene as quickly as possible. Getting all the lifeboats out, calling the helicopter.
Job on, guys.
The biggest search and rescue operation the island had ever seen was launched. The Navy, Air Force, lifeboats and Coast Guards were all scrambled.
Stornoway Coast Guard, Nestlima, over.
The reports that were given seemed very, very alien to us, very strange to us, and we did not know what we were searching for at all. We expected to find some type of debris in the water, although we did not know at that time exactly what had crashed, if anything had crashed into the winch at that time. Carried out a systematic search of the area, and we found nothing at all.
When you have an incident like this, you at least expect to find some sort of wreckage to identify. But there was absolutely nothing there that was found at all. We covered an area of hundreds of square miles, and we had 2 search and rescue helicopters with their sophisticated equipment. We had a Nimrod aircraft from the RAF, which has very, very sophisticated locating equipment that can pick up a 5-gallon oil drum in the water from thousands of feet. So if there had been anything, wreckage or debris there, we would have expected the rescue services to have picked up something.
But after 2 days, when nothing had been found, the search was called off.
And that leaves you with a sense of frustration in some ways, because you knew that there had some incident that happened out there, but we couldn't actually identify anything on the scene.
So what did happen that day to spark such a reaction?
Well, in the Outer Hebrides, there have been test ranges for the last 50 years or so. Everything that has flown in Britain in terms of missiles have all been tested in ranges up there. It's an ideal area, it's sparsely populated, and it's an area where if something goes wrong, you're unlikely to cause any, what the military call these days, collateral damage. In other words, you're going to hurt anybody who's not a part of the program. Even with perfectly proven missile systems, they will do something that is unexpected. The most likely explanation is that we're talking about some sort of unmanned air vehicle, whether it's for reconnaissance or for weapons delivery. There's a lot of research going on at the moment into making very stealthy, very small, very capable air vehicles.
The Ministry of Defence categorically deny the explosion had anything to do with them, but this isn't the only explanation for what happened.
From the reports, there is another possibility, and this is that it's a piece of space hardware that is coming out of orbit and just hitting the atmosphere and burning up. And this is happening all the time because there are lots of spacecraft orbiting Earth, and they don't stay there forever. Friction slowly brings them in, and then at the end of their life, they just burn up and produce a lovely shooting star in the sky. And this can end in flares, it can make a bang because they're moving quickly. And this is a distinct possibility.
Others believe it wasn't space junk, but that it did come from space. So could it have been a UFO?
The chances of this being a flying saucer are absolutely negligible. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't love it to be a flying saucer, because I would really like to have evidence that there are little green men out there who are trying to get in touch. But it's never happened in the past, and the chances of this being one, I would say 0.
2 years later, and still no one can agree about what was seen that day.
My personal thoughts are that it was a meteor of some sort, come down through the atmosphere, exploded, and the particles of that meteor then landed in the sea.
What I saw was certainly no meteorite. It was certainly a small aircraft coming lower as it headed towards the village. There's no way could I make a mistake that that wasn't a plane or any other object for that matter. It was certainly a plane.
But if it was a plane, then why was no wreckage ever found?
Somebody is hiding something, because there have been so many witnesses, so many reports of the incident, and no one has admitted that anything out of the ordinary went wrong or even happened that particular day.
Think about it, but I haven't come up with any conclusions at all, and I honestly don't know. And I look up and I say, well, what's next?
That's it for this week. But on our next programme, how did a car crash save this woman's life? The mystery of 400 people admitted to hospital. Why could doctors find nothing wrong? And what stopped a vicious shark attack from ending in death? More mysteries next time. Until then, goodbye.
And that's next Tuesday on BBC One, 8:30.